Hello, I am comedian Steve Trevino. We are at the Haha Cafe in North Hollywood. I was booked to do a private show in Pasadena, and I decided that I wanted to do a show, a one-off, and we ended up at the Haha Cafe doing a show tonight. I don't even know where to start with you guys. It's a very special show tonight. I normally don't drink on stage because I like to be professional. I need a drink. Let me tell you my schedule. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning because I coach Little League for my son. And then we had a game at 9 o'clock in the morning with 5-year-olds. And if you've ever, I don't know if you have kids, but it's like a fucking cartoon show. I mean, you're herding cats. I'll tell the story that, my dad and his friend, my dad's a Vietnam vet, and his cousins and my uncles are probably some of the toughest men I've ever met in my life. And growing up, and I don't know how it was at your house, but the men would party outside and the women would party inside. We'd always have parties on the weekends. My dad's house was the party house. And when I was a very little kid, for the first time ever, I saw all of them together in the living room, watching TV and laughing. And I snuck over to see what has brought these people together. Why is tonight different? And it was Richard Pryor, live on the Sunset Strip. And I watched probably the toughest men I've ever seen in my life hang out with their wives, which didn't happen back then, laughing, having a wonderful time, and that was kind of the light bulb moment for me where I go, wow, man, I want to do that. And I was probably 5 or 6. Well, fast forward 8 or 9, they're having a barbecue, Dad's putting me on the picnic table, and I'm reciting Eddie Murphy Raw. And I'm making these men laugh, and there was a feeling of, and I hate to say it this way, but there's a feeling of power. There was a feeling of, man, I'm making the toughest guys, welders, pipe fitters, bikers, these really rough men laugh. And I just took a liking to it. And I was very lucky that my mom's side of the family, very talented. You see other artists where Eddie Murphy, Raw, where the family gets together and they have a little talent show. Well, that was my mom's family. It was always, hey, we're going to have a talent show and the kids are going to perform, and I did stand-up. So it's always been a passion for me, and I've never wanted to do anything else but stand-up. I think about men that grow up without dads, and I think to myself, who was teaching them? How did they learn? And if you have a husband that didn't have a dad and he turned out to be a good man, he's an amazing man because he had nobody showing him. I did, man. I have a dad that showed me how to work hard, how to sacrifice, And I want that for my kid. But I want my kid to see me work hard so that he can work hard. But I do this for a living. When am I going to come home tomorrow? I work hard for this shit. For me, the black comedian was closer to me. Bill Cosby, and I know that things have changed, but Bill Cosby for me growing up was like, ooh, I want that guy to be my dad. I didn't want, Archie Bunker or some of the other dads to be my dad. I wanted Bill Cosby to be my dad because as a Latino, the black dad for me was closer, and sadly enough for Mexican Americans, it hasn't changed. Here we are 30 years later, and young kids still to this day young Latinos do not have a Latino dad on TV. And it's really sad, but that's why I gravitated to comedy and the Richard Pryors. So top 5 for me of all time, I would put Richard Pryor up there. And I'd say Richard Pryor for doing comedy the way he was doing it at the time that he was doing it. Eddie Murphy for being just extremely talented. I wouldn't say that Eddie Murphy's stand-up was revolutionary, but I would say that he was so talented. His voices, his ability to communicate, and the impressions, and his storytelling, and everything. So I'll put him up there. Dice Clay for bringing a rawness to comedy, an aggression to comedy, a rock star atmosphere. So you got to put Sam Kinison. But guys like Rodney Dangerfield, real joke tellers, guys that wrote. I mean, Rodney Dangerfield said, "I've got a million jokes," And again, the sad part for me is as a Latino, as a Mexican American, I put George up there. We need George. We need a George. The sad part is that nothing's ever followed. My wife must be the strongest woman in the world. I mean, women in general, you're the strongest people on the planet. I tell people that all the time. Women are strong, man. They're crazy. I mean, the fact that my wife is willing to have another child, I saw her have the first one. A football came out of where she pees or somewhere down there. 9 pounds. And she wants to do that again? Let me tell you something, people. If a hockey puck came out of where I pee, that's the last hockey puck I'm having. Well, they're all on board. Everybody's in on it. Everybody loves it. My wife's in on it. My in-laws are part of the act as well. They're all in on it. And for me, I went through kind of a growing phase. When I moved to LA, I thought, okay, well, I got to live in LA. I got to do stand-up. And then I started to notice that I was different. And I was different in the fact that I was living with my girlfriend. I wanted her to be my wife. I wanted to be a family man. And I didn't want to have the LA lifestyle. And it got scary for me because I'm thinking, well, if I get all of this stuff, am I going to lose my career? Do I not have a career now? Right? And I started thinking to myself, well, I don't care anymore. I got to the point where I go, I'm going to talk about my wife. I'm going to talk about my life, my family. And I don't have to be the typical hang out till 4 a.m. comic, because there's guys like Jim Gaffigan who have a family. Guys like Ray Romano. There's all these comedians that I go, wait a minute. I don't see these guys hanging out in LA every day. Right? I don't have to be that. So there was a kind of an awakening for me. And then once I had that awakening, then everybody in my family and the person that I am, who is a small town family man, really, I admire my parents. I have great parents. I started incorporating that into the act, and really that's when everything changed for me. And that's when I really separated myself from the other comics. And not that they're not great, it's just I wasn't them. I had a crazy weekend.
Yeah.
Crazy weekend. And I want to thank Aztec Chevrolet first and foremost, but then we'll talk about them a little later. Okay. Because they kind of saved my ass. All right.
Did they?
They did. They kind of saved my ass. And then also, I want to let everybody know that if you hear a little giggle in the background, I have my cousins here.
A giggle? They don't. Yeah. If you saw what they look like, they don't look like the kind of men who giggle.
No, I don't want them to like slip a laugh or something, and then
you didn't.
And then people go, well, what the hell's going on?
Guys, since they're there, let's introduce them. Come on.
So they are brothers, and I was.
Come around this way. Yeah, come around this way.
Here is the crazy thing: is this is JD. He's been JD to me. He's been Danny to me. He's Joaquin. And then that's cousin Josh. They are brothers, and coincidentally, we are very close in age. However, their dad is my first cousin. I'll tell you this story. So, my cousin Jeremy has a brother who is 16 years younger than him. To make a long story short, he was supposed to be spending the night at his friend's house, decided to go home. He caught his parents having sex. 16 years later, he's sitting with his dad, and he says, Dad, or several years later, he goes, Dad, man, why would you have a kid 16 years after me? And he goes, remember that night you came home? You scared me. I didn't pull out. Now we have your brother. So my cousin Jeremy, his big joke on his brother is, I made you, right? There is no you without me, bro, right? So I walk on stage, I tell that story after to be funny, and I acted like it was me. Afterwards, people would go, man, I didn't know you had a brother. And I felt like a fraud, and I felt like a liar. And that day I go, no more telling stories that aren't real. And when I made that decision is when my career started taking off, when things were really, and so the more honest I became, the better I did, the funnier it was. You know, I pull the curtain back on the things I think about, the situation, my frustrations with my wife. I pull the curtain back, and now I have people that reach out and go, hey man, you're teaching me how to be a dad. Hey man, we were going to get a divorce, but after watching your set, we realized that we're not alone, that we're normal. So once I got more honest, more real, it just related more. And we actually named a special relatable because I kept hearing, you're relatable, you're relatable, you're relatable. And people came out tonight to see their lives on stage. We all go through, how do we raise our kids? How do we do a good job, right? I'm frustrated with my wife, you know, and this is the kind of dad I had, you know. I used that word today, the F word today, that I don't use. I don't use that word, but my dad did. So in order to make the story real, my dad has to talk the way my dad talked, right? So I make sure to make it authentic and real, and people seem to really grab onto that. My wife has been a savior to me. I love my wife very, very much, and she got me through 2020. And for the first time in my life, I have been doing comedy for 20. Been doing comedy for 20 years. I've been on the road for 20 years. Every weekend of my life, I do stand up. You know, when I have a Saturday off, I have moments of like, I'm glad to be off, but God, I need to be on stage. So when 2020 hit and I got considered non-essential, and I'm sitting at home, for the first time in my life, I experienced depression, real depression. I didn't want to get out of my bed. For the first time, I had panic attacks. I thought I was having heart attacks. They were panic attacks. We called the emergency. And the emergency comes and goes, look, we can take you to the hospital, but you're not having a heart attack. You're having a panic attack, and you need to relax. So I was having these panic attacks, and my wife comes to me and she goes, this is not you. She goes, you need to wake up, be you, and be creative and find a way to win. And we started doing a podcast, me and her. And we started every weekly kind of talking about, and we have people that come up to us today and go, you got us through coronavirus. Because you would go every week, you and your wife, and we would watch you guys through coronavirus. And I'm going, no, guys, you guys got me out of this. So we you know, but it was my wife that said, get off your ass. Let's do something, right? And ultimately, and I talk about it in my Life in Quarantine that's on Amazon Prime, my wife and I were struggling to have a kid. We had a miscarriage that was devastating to us. And I talk about the miscarriage on my Life in Quarantine. But now I have a 7-month-old baby girl, and I look at all the positive. I look at yes, it was a terrible year, but I learned what depression was, and I now sympathize and empathize with people who... But before I would go, not that I didn't empathize or sympathize, I'd go, okay, depression, I get it, it must suck. Now I'm like, oh man, I know what it is, right? So I got that out of it. I got a learning moment. I fell in love with my wife even more because of her courage and her ability to go, hey, pick yourself up and let's go. And ultimately I ended up with this beautiful baby girl that we called Delilah. And I might not have gotten my wife pregnant had we not slowed down, been together as a husband and wife, and had that baby, because we kept trying to get pregnant and we couldn't. And now here we are with a blessing. My dad didn't even know how to take us to school. He'd be like, hey, so what do we do? What do we do? Go get mom. That's what the fuck we're doing. There should be breakfast right now. Music. We should be singing songs. We should be happy. This is sad as fuck. It's called I Speak Wife. And, you know, again, it is I always say that it's episodic. You know, you look at Grandpa Joe's Son that I did for Showtime a long time ago, and that was me getting engaged, me dealing with engagement. How am I going to handle engagement? Then me and my wife self-produced Relatable. That was, I'm married now. Here's my issues with being married. Here's where I am in my life. Then all of a sudden we did Till Death. Well, man, we just had a kid. Here's what's like for me and my wife to have kids. And then the next one was I Speak Wife. Here's the things I'm dealing with my wife. Here's the stories that have happened since then. And then this new special that I'm working on that we have not yet filmed. I want to call it Raising Treviños because the big thing in our home is our kids. And the cool part is I have had fans since Grandpa Joe's son that go, oh my God, I was getting engaged when you were getting engaged. Oh my God, I got married when you got married. Oh my God, I had kids when you had kids. So we're all growing together. And if that ends up happening, then I'll never not have fans. I'm constantly touring every single week. That's how I make my bread and butter. That's how I make my money. I love stand-up. I love it. There's nothing more fulfilling to me. Well, family first, family and faith first, of course. But when I walk on that stage and I get to, tonight was a really special show because tonight was, hey, there's only 100, 150 of you here. We sold it out in about 38 minutes, is what I was told. And I can just talk, right? And there was a moment where I wrote some material tonight where I'm talking about coaching Little League that normally I wouldn't talk about. But it's, hey, let me tell you about my day-to-day and what I went through today. So I was able to create, and it felt good. It felt nice to be on stage and open up a little bit and be a little more relaxed because, you know, I'll be in San Jose next week. Well, there's 550 people a show, and they paid a lot of money to be there. I'm going to do a killer set. I'm not going to work on new material like I did tonight. So this is what I love, and it's given me the ability to do it, and I do it every week. Hi, my name is Steve Trevino, and you've just been buzzed.